In this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate how to download Python and install the program itself. So we can take a look at and we can start using the Python program to create some programs. So here I have my Chrome browser open. You can use any browser, whether it's Internet Explorer, Firefox, or Chrome. I tend to use Chrome, and I have my home page as Google open. So I'm going to go up to my Google search, for instance, and I'm going to say download Python. And it's going to bring up the web page with the results. And the very first one is obviously the python.org. I could have just gone directly and typed python.org to get to that website. But if you do not know where Python is, how to download it, you can simply search on Google and it will give you the results. So once I have the download Python link, I can click on this particular link and this will take me to the python.org website. And here, right off the bat on the home page, I'm able to see the download the latest version for Windows. If I need other versions, I can click on the Linux, Unix, Mac, OS, or others as well. Since I'm using a Windows computer, Windows 8 machine, I can simply click on the download Python 3.5.1 version, or I can choose Python 2.7.11. Now really, what's the difference between these two? Obviously, the 2.7.11 is an older version, and the newest version is 3.5.1. But why would you want to download the older version? Should there be just one latest version so everyone can download this? Well, here's the difference between the two downloads. The reason why people download, or programmers, developers download the earlier version, which is 2.7.11, is mainly because of the library support. In other words, there are tons and tons of programmers that create code that is written in this particular version, 2.7.11. Whereas since 3.5.1 is a newer version, which also means that certain syntax might be different, certain commands might be different, because most of the commands are added, newer commands are added. For example, the syntax or the sentence structure or the assignment may be different from the earlier version. Therefore, there's less library support as compared to earlier versions. So that's the only main difference that I want to talk about, apart from other differences as well. But this is the main one, that why you wish to download the older versions. Okay, but nevertheless, let's stick to the newest version, because that's where programmers move towards and the right code in the newest version, and eventually you'll have your library support and other tools and features with this version as well. So once you are on the home page, just simply click on download Python 3.5.1 and it opens up area where you need to save the program. Notice the file name is python-3.5.1.exe, which means an executable file. And I'm going to download in my data files folder, and I've created a folder called Python, and this is where I'm going to save the application. So once I click save, on the bottom here, notice it's going to start to download. So the actual file size is about 27.4 megs, and it's going to download Python 3.5.1. And once it's downloaded, then I'll go back to the location of this executable file. I'm going to install Python. In the meantime, while this is downloaded, on the python.org website, there's a couple of good links that you can take a look at. For example, the documentation link is good. So if you're more savvy about documentation, you can always find different documentations of Python 3 version docs or the earlier version as well. So you can take a look at. There are also a couple of other links such as Beginner's Guide, Developer's Guide, Frequently Asked Questions, and other books as well. Okay, but typically these are helpful. These links are helpful if you know the program itself and you're comfortable programming using the Python language. Then you can fish through these and find out various code or set of code, and visit perhaps the community site and take a look at the Python wiki and find different codes. For instance, if you're developing a program, you can always search python.org and get to the place where you need to be. All right, it seems like our program has successfully been downloaded. I can click right off of my browser to install Python, but just to verify whether it was downloaded on my computer, I'm going to switch to my Windows Explorer so we can see. So if I were to navigate to the directory where the download was specified, I now see that I have python-3.5.1.exe, and it tells me the actual size of the application. And once again, I can simply run this program by double-clicking on this program. It brings up a dialog box, simply tells me, do you want to run this file? And I'm going to say run this file, and it's going to start the installation process. The first step that I see in my install is that this is Python 3.5.1 32-bit version. And I can simply click install now, and it will install the program in the respective directory. So for instance, the current installation directory is displayed. I already have Python installed, okay, so that's why it picks up the default directory. I can always change by click on customize installation and choose the location as well as features as well. So if I were to click on customize installation, notice it gives me several options, such as it will install the documentation along with the program, it will install the PIP, the TCL, TK, and the idle, Python test suite, and the PyLauncher, and it's going to make it available for all users. So I can pick and choose depending on some of the optional features. I'm going to leave it as default, in other words, install everything. On the bottom, install launcher for all users, which is recommended, and add Python 3.5 to path. Okay, so we're going to leave as is. I'm just going to leave the path also, and I'm going to click on install now. And it's going to run through the installation process. It's going to initialize, and it's a pretty straightforward process. So it's just going to ask you a couple of screens, next, next, and then it will install the program itself. And it usually takes some time because it installs the development libraries, the actual program itself, the executables, and the progress bar shows you that it's been installed in the background as well. And once again, it also installs the optional items that we selected before the installation process, such as the documentation, the scripts, the TCL, TK support, and so on. And finally, it displays a message that setup was successful. And once it's done, you can always click close, and you've successfully installed Python. But how do you know whether it's there or not? In other words, where do you go and in fact open the program? Well, it creates a desktop shortcut. Okay, so I'm going to navigate to my desktop so you can see the actual program, or I can always find within my Windows as well. So if I were to open up my, since I'm using Windows 8 here, if I type Python in the search, notice it's going to bring up a list of items that contain the word Python. Okay, so since, as I mentioned earlier, I already have the Python 3.5 64-bit installed, it's already listed. And now I've successfully installed the Python 3.5, the 32-bit, which is down here. Okay, so notice these are a couple of options here. It's Python 32-bit, and then I have the idle Python 32-bit, same versions. In my next lesson, I'm going to demonstrate and talk about what these are and how do we open these. But for right now, it also installed the manuals and the documents as well. Okay, so I have two versions of Python installed. First, obviously, I was using the 64-bit, so that's there, which is again the first two options here on the list. And then my 32-bit that I just demonstrated, and I installed the 32-bit version. And I can click on the Python idle, for example, the 32-bit version, which I just installed just to make sure that it runs, and it will open up the Python shell for me. Let me maximize this, and here it is. So here, for example, just to see whether I'm using the current version or not, I'm going to type import sys, and then I'm going to say print sys version, and this will display the version of Python that's installed. Notice in this instance it's version 3.5.1 and the date is December 6th, 2015, which is pretty current. But then again, this is a 32-bit install. So in this lesson, I demonstrated how to search Python, in other words, where to go and find the Python program. Software program is free. You can download it. And I also demonstrated how to go to python.org, download the software, install it on your machine. Fairly straightforward process. Open the Python shell and then check to see whether the version is correct or not. So practice, and let's move to our next lesson.